welcome back, everyone. Major updates happening right now. In New York City, the vaccine mandates have now come to a close. And no, this was not government deciding it was over. This was not the local mayor or local governor saying, hey, pandemic's over. This was the New York Supreme Court determining that based on Biden's statements that the pandemic was over and based on, violations of the Constitution, that everybody who lost their jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic because they refused to get vaccinated should be reinstated to their jobs and also get back pay for everything they lost. Folks, this is a major update. The court ruling has a lot of stuff that could apply for a lot more people than just the New Yorkers. And folks, this is going to, I think, really have some sweeping effects when it comes to lawsuits, when it comes to other people standing up for their rights, because the New York Supreme Court determination is pretty profound. I'm going to be going over that with you today. Also, folks, some other big things we'll be getting into, so stick around. That said, those of you on Rumble, those of you on YouTube, remember after about 25 minutes, we will switch over to Epic TV exclusively. So if you don't have Epic TV yet, come join us there, get your free trial. And folks, that said, let's get started. Now, those of you wondering too, I'm actually on the road right now, so broadcasting from the road. Folks, let's start by going over what's happening with the vaccine mandates ending in New York City. Let me start off here. This is Twitter. And I'll just play you the video. This is the lawyer. This is one of the lawyers talking about this after they just won this victory in the Supreme Court in New York. Let me play that for you real quick and we'll get started with this.
My name is Chad LaValia. I'm an attorney who gets to represent these fine men and women over here. What just happened was the judge found that the city's vaccine mandate is unconstitutional, violates the separation of powers, found it to be arbitrary and capricious. He found the commissioner's order mandating private and public employees to get vaccinated was arbitrary and capricious. And it's null and void, essentially. So we just defeated the vaccine mandate for every single city employee, not just sanitation, FDNY, NYPD, Department of Corrections, for all the brave men and women who have been our first responders and have been brave through all this. You're now free, and you should be able to go back to work. So my name's...
You get that, folks? Now, that applies just to New York City, at least for now. The court ruling itself has other implications that could really apply for other areas outside of New York. Keep in mind, New York and California are arguably the furthest left states in the entire country. And being the furthest left states in the entire country, ironically, they're the most tyrannical when it came to COVID policies. Now, given that one of the most tyrannical states in the country has, basically lost in the court on this, really anywhere right of New York has a pretty good shot at also getting rid of these policies and ending them, hopefully permanently. Because let me show you what the court has decided with this. Let me show you the document now. This is a Richmond County Clerk. This is at 9:22 a.m., October 25th. This is the actual document. I'm going to skip down to the bottom because it goes over a lot of just the deliberations and stuff, but I want to get really into the official ruling with this, and it says this. It is clear that the Health Commission has the authority to issue public health mandates. Right? They're not denying that authority. They said no one is refuting that authority. However, the Health Commissioner cannot create a new condition of employment for city employees. The Health Commissioner cannot prohibit an employee from reporting to work. The Health Commissioner cannot terminate employees. Now, remember why that's significant. Is because Obama was going through the department, I believe it was the Department of Commerce, trying to institute, and the Department of Labor, trying to institute his own mandates from the federal level. Remember, he was blocked with some of that, and it went to the states. Now we're finding the states do not have that type of authority. It says the mayor cannot exempt certain employees from these orders. So even the mayor cannot intervene in this ruling, even the mayor cannot overrule it, because they're saying that the health commissioner can't do it, well, neither can the mayor. And it says further in, being vaccinated does not prevent an individual from contracting or transmitting COVID-19. There you have it, folks. and an official court ruling. If you get vaccinated, that's your own choice, but doing it, know that you are not, forbidding yourself. You're not ending the ability of yourself to get COVID-19. You're also not ending your ability to contract it to others, to transmit it to others. And that defeats the entire basis for the justification of the vaccine mandates. This idea that even if you don't want it for yourself, even if it's not personal protection, right? It's about protecting others. Well, guess what? You can still spread it. In fact, the data suggests you're more likely to get it, ironically, and you're still just as likely to spread it. There's no basis for the ruling, as the Supreme Court in New York has just determined. Now, they say, as the day of this decision, CDC guidelines regarding quarantine and isolation are the same for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. And the basis, the implications of that if whether you're vaccinated or not, if you contract COVID-19 and you were to, for example, be put under isolation, even though they ended that part, the CDC did end that part, I believe. Even if they do that, the basis of that is the idea that whether you're vaccinated or not, you're just as likely to spread it. There's no basis for it. It says also the petitioners should not have been terminated for choosing not to protect themselves. Your own health is your own decision, folks. We have learned through the course of the pandemic that the vaccine against COVID-19 is not absolute. Breakthrough cases occur even for those who have been vaccinated and boosted. And this is the big part. President Joseph Biden has said the pandemic is over. The state of New York ended the COVID-19 state of emergency over a month ago. And folks, you remember that Biden did in fact tell 60 Minutes in September that the pandemic was over. And the statement of the President of the United States was overruled by the big corporate media, who tried to interpret what Biden really meant when he said the pandemic was over. The corporate news outlets tried changing that. Fauci tried changing that, even questioning the words of President Biden himself. The pandemic is over, and the Supreme Court is basing its ruling on Biden's statement. Now, of course, they get into the idea of, well, does Biden mean what he says? Well, are they saying Biden might have some kind of mental deficiency and he doesn't say what he means to say? That seems like a pretty bold way to go for them, if you ask me. But of course, going by the idea that Biden is mentally stable and totally mentally sound, what he says is the words of the president, and Biden declared, the pandemic is over, folks. Now, why is the big corporate media trying to maintain this? Why is Fauci trying to maintain this? Maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome. Maybe it's a type of corruption where they want to just keep these policies regardless of reality. Maybe it's something else. But what matters, folks, is that regardless of all of that, the basis of the mandates, the basis of these things is gone. The basis is gone. And before I go deeper into this, because I want to go deeper into the ruling, there's some important points in this that apply to you no matter where you're at. No matter what state you're in, these facts, the stuff I'm going to go over in a bit, could really impact your own. If you have lawsuits, if you're challenging these things, you can use this as some of the basis for it. The Supreme Court ruling is really profound in that regard. But I'll get into that in a bit. First, though, folks, we do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by American Hartford Gold. Now, inflation is going to continue and likely get worse. The Fed chair, that's Powell, is warning us to brace ourselves. Well, there's one way to hedge against inflation. American Hartford Gold makes it simple and easy to diversify your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one short phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or into your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is one of the highest rated firms in the country with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. And also, folks, they have thousands of satisfied clients. If you call them right now, they'll give you up to $2,500 of free silver and a free safe on your first qualifying order. So don't wait. Call them now. That's 877-260-2764, 877-260-2764. or text Joshua to 65532. Just one more time, that's 877-260-2764, or text Joshua to 65532. And big thanks out to American Hartford Gold for sponsoring today's episode. All right, folks, going deeper into this, let me show you more of what the Supreme Court in New York has determined. I want to show you again the actual document. We're going to go over a bit more of this, because the ruling could be applied in pretty much anywhere right of New York. Now it says this: the vaccination mandate for city employees was not just about safety and public health. It was about compliance. You get that, folks? The vaccination mandate, whether you're in the military, whether you're, serving as a police officer, or you're in the fire department, or you're working in the Department of Sanitation, the vaccine mandates, the Supreme Court of New York is saying, is not just about public safety. Well, if it's not about public safety, what's it about? They say it's about compliance. This is about forcing you to comply and seeing whether you comply. They say it was about safety. If it was about safety and public health, unvaccinated workers would have been placed on leave the moment the order was issued. If it was about safety and public health, the health commissioner would have issued citywide vaccine mandates for all residents. In a city with a nearly 80% vaccination rate, we shouldn't be penalizing people who show up to work at a great risk to themselves and their families while we were locked down. If it was about safety and public health, no one would be exempt. It is time for the city of New York to do what is right and what is just. And it states, well, that was the actual statement, but it says also, it determines that the health commissioner of New York City, well, of New York in general, violated the separation of powers doctrine of the New York Constitution. The health commissioner did not have the jurisdiction to be able to mandate things, to fire people, to make it so people had to get something to show up for work. The health commissioner did not have the legal right to be doing that. Similar to how, again, I believe was it HHS now? I can't remember now. When Biden tried making his health mandate, the Supreme Court overall actually ruled against him as well, or it wasn't lower courts. It also says it violated the Equal Protection Act, because one of the big things they did in New York was they tried making it so that certain people would be exempt, right, based on identity politics and so on. There was even some policies making it so that, for example, black residents could get vaccinated sooner than white residents, weird stuff like this. They're saying that in itself violates the Equal Protections Act. And also, because of the way they did it, it was suggesting that if it was a real emergency, it would have applied equally to everybody, not having, Group A being weighed, more heavily or more importantly than Group B. If it was, in fact, a real pandemic and everybody was at risk to the point where you'd want to make it so people can't show up for work unless they get vaccinated, you wouldn't be selectively mandating it or allowing people through the door early based on the color of their skin. The New York Supreme Court has determined again, these vaccine mandates were in violation of the Equal Protections Act. Now, one important thing, that's specifically in New York because of the way the mandates were rolled out. But I'll tell you why that applies for the entire country. Because, folks, let's go back in time. Do you remember what happened in the early days of the pandemic? Do you remember when we were placed on lockdown, when none of us could leave our homes? Actually, funny enough, I think when I was doing my live broadcast from my house, and I just started doing that every day. Do you remember that? Well, folks, do you remember what else happened? While we were all on lockdown, while all of us were locked inside our homes and they were saying you're going to kill grandma if you go outside, what was allowed to happen? Well, Black Lives Matter was allowed to have mass protests on the streets, violating social distancing, going outside, many of them not wearing face masks, doing everything against what we were told, doing everything that violated the whole basis of the lockdowns. Do you remember that? That should be a violation of the Equal Protections Act. That should be a violation of the Constitution. because you can't allow people to violate something while you're taking extreme measures, making it so that Americans cannot go to work, making it so that kids cannot go to school, making it so that people have to either lose their jobs or work from home, making it so that you can't even leave your house unless you want to go to the grocery store. But if you want to protest, if you want to burn down buildings, if you want to do all that, well, hey, it's about social justice. Have at it. If it was really about public safety, would they allow that? If they really cared about those people, if they really believed that they were at risk to themselves and others, would they allow them to go out and protest and, well, probably die? Well, probably not. So what was it about? Well, if we go by the New York Supreme Court, folks, this was not about safety. This was about compliance. And folks, there you have it. Interestingly, it doesn't just end there. They also say it violated due process because you can't you can't, and this is interesting. It's pre-crime. You can't tell people they have to get something. You can't tell people they have to get vaccinated. You can't tell people they have to, get fired from their jobs for being at risk of committing a crime if they want to make it so that the vaccines are mandated. They want to make it so that if you're not vaccinated, right, you may contract a virus, and if you contract the virus, then you're a threat. Well, guess what? If you don't have the virus, you're not a threat. So why are they mandating this for healthy people? You can't do that. It's a violation of due process, as the Supreme Court of New York has now determined. And also, folks, it found that the health commissioner and the mayor's orders in New York are to be arbitration and also capricious. These orders were unnecessary. These orders were unjust. The Supreme Court has now struck them down. Now, keep in mind, folks, that this only applies for New York currently. But as I mentioned, New York and California were some of the most tyrannical, some of the worst states in the entire country on these policies. And New York and California are about as far left as you can possibly get. Ironically, some of the most tyrannical in the entire country. And anywhere that's right of New York or California, very likely you can win cases on these exact same arguments. Because these exact same arguments were used across the whole country as justification for these mandates and for other things like it. Really, what you're watching is the end of the pandemic. As Biden himself said last month, the pandemic is over. All right, folks, let's go deeper into this. I want to go into some other big things right now. Before I go to that, though, briefly, the important part with all this as well, this takes place as the new bivalent shots for Omicron are being released. Remember that they made this whole omnibus package of vaccines. Things that protect against, they claim, Omicron. Things they claim protect against all previous variants and maybe even future variants. Well, this new vaccine they're pushing out, which they say is going to protect you from all the variants of the virus that the previous ones did not, they tested it on 8 mice. Count on your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mice. No humans. How are they going to say it's going to protect you? What's the legal basis for this? Well, I would say that is arbitrarious and capricious, if you were to ask me. I'd say